Welcome to a Wednesday edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm your host, John Gonzalez, alongside our NBA insider, Bill Ryder. And Bill, big day for you. Are you ready for Barca and PSG? I'm surprised you're even doing the show.
I got my PSG jersey. I got my PSG, whatever this thing is, zip up. I'm a little nervous, John.
You mean Barca?
Barca. Sorry, did I say PSG? I'm saying that's how nervous I am. I watched.
You don't even know what team you're rooting for.
I know. I watched the 16. So I couldn't sleep last night. I worked late. I did a late hit, missed you. Couldn't sleep. So I watched the 2016-17 comeback, the Barcelona. That's how, but I can't, not PSG. Boo PSG. I'm very excited, a little nervous. Be excited. I'm not going to be able to watch it live, so no spoilers. I'm going to have to watch it a little bit later.
All right. Well, you'll watch it later, and people can check that out on Paramount Plus. Paramount Company, parent company shout out there. So go and check that out. Big time Champions League today. Bill's very excited about it. We're also excited about basketball. Thank you for listening to the show. We encourage you to download and follow. Later in the program, talk about the Western Conference after the Lakers and Warriors game last night. Big win for the Warriors, and we're going to do a little stock up, stock down. But first, the Bucks, Bill, a little good news, bad news.
Yeah.
They beat the Celtics last night. They had lost 4 in a row in 6 of their last 7. So that's the good news. Now, the Celtics were out without Al Horford and Kristaps Porzingis, but still good win. Bad news, Giannis. Yeah, third quarter non-contact injury. He left with a calf strain. They did an MRI on it. Turns out his Achilles is intact, so that's the good news. Now, afterwards, Dame said that he had basically the same exact injury previously, and it typically takes about 1 to 2 weeks to recover. So what have you heard, and how concerned should they be?
And easy to re-aggravate, which I think Dame also talked about. All right, so texting now actually with some folks in Milwaukee, trying to get an actual timeline, which is not going successfully. But I can tell you, I was texting last night. They felt the mood was pretty dire last night. And the mood now, just looking at these text messages, I think at 5 a.m. our time, we're on Pacific time when this came out, was pretty exuberant. You're right. They don't know how long it's going to be. There's a pain tolerance part of this. There's a risk about coming back too early and re-injuring the calf or hurting other parts of the body in the calf. So they're still not out of the woods, and they know that. And I think that they're aware, John, that if you don't have Giannis, you don't have a chance. I think you and I have talked about what chances do they have even when Giannis was fully healthy. But there's certainly relief in Milwaukee. And it looks like, just again, I don't have this per se, but just texting with some of the folks there, they're clearly hopeful they can get him back and try to get him out there a little bit before a first round series, or at least full practice. There's some muted optimism now. That's very different than even 12 hours ago.
Yeah, it's a tricky injury. I mean, afterwards, Doc was asked last night after the game, he's like, how concerned are you? And he said, very. He said his concern level was high. And it would be for me too, prior to getting the MRI. It's not the greatest news, but it's better than if he blows out an Achilles and then forget about it. You're not seeing him for quite some time, not deep into the next season. Yeah, so at least they could potentially get him back.
Right. That's exactly right. They thought there was a chance he was done, and now they know there's a chance that he's not. And that is where we are.
So now we're looking at this Bucks team that has not been right all season, has had injuries to Dame, has had injuries to Chris Middleton. Giannis was in and out of the lineup. Now he's going to be out at least until almost, there's a chance, I suppose, that he could get back in time for the playoffs, but I'd be shocked if he plays again during the regular season. He's going to have to sit out the rest of this week at least. And as you mentioned, they need Giannis. They needed him last night. He went out. They still won the game. They're 16-17 under Doc. And I don't know what to make of this team. I'm not super high on them, even with Giannis. Without him, scary times, because last night, Bill, going into the game, Doc decided to pull some panic levers, and he decided to start Patrick Beverley in place of Malik Beasley, who had started 75 games for them. And was 9th in the league in 3-pointers made. Starts Pat Beverley because their perimeter defense has been an absolute disaster. Out of nowhere, Patrick Beverley went for 20 and 10 last night.
I mean, look, so I am not a big Doc Rivers guy, and I certainly saw that move, and it happened as what I think it was. Doc Rivers looking for someone else to blame or some other lever to pull that's not going to be a significant difference maker over the course of the handful of games, not even that many that we have left, and the postseason. But it did work, and it is a good win. Can I give you? It's funny. I actually think Doc Rivers losing 4 games in a row has a silver lining, and assuming that Giannis returns, I think there's a huge silver. I wouldn't have wanted to win that game. I think there's a silver lining to Giannis missing the rest of the regular season. If he's back, I don't want the 2 seed. I was thinking about this last night. Now that Milwaukee has lost 4 or 5 and could have lost 5 in a row if they just found a way to just tank against the Celtics somehow. You don't want to play, and I know this can change, but it really looks like it's going to be Sixers Heat in the 7-8. I do not want to play either of those teams if I'm anybody. If I'm Philadelphia or I'm Miami and I go into a 7-game series against the Bucks with all the drama they've had, even if there is a healthy Giannis, which again, we'll see, I feel pretty good about my chances. If I'm Doc Rivers and the Bucks, I want to lose both these games to the Magic coming up. I'd rather have the Magic pass me or the Knicks pass me and have a chance to play what would be. I'd love a shot at Cleveland. I'd love a shot at the Pacers. I don't know. The 2 seed, I think, might be a bit of a poison chalice. And there's a world where your Sixers could get out and this doesn't play out that way. So it's a risky game. But I don't love, if I'm the Bucks, that necessarily they beat Boston last night. I would be leery of that 2 seed at this stage of things.
I think they needed a win. I mean, when you lose to the teams that you lost to, when you lose to the Wiz, the Grizz, and the Raptors, and then the Knicks smack you around on your floor, I think they needed a win. And what you're talking about right now, let's just say they had lost last night, and then they go full Bill Ryder and tank their way out of the 2 seed. You're going to the playoffs with no Giannis on. What would that then be? If they lost last night, that would be 5 plus the remaining 3. That'd be an 8-game losing streak. That's
you're not. I mean, I don't think it matters. I disagree. I think it doesn't matter at all. What matters is playing a team you can beat in the first round of the playoffs, and you're not beating the Sixers. You're not beating your Sixers. And the Heat are kind of interesting. Producer Aaron thinks I'm angry in the basketball gods.
Yes, you are spitting in the basketball gods' faces. They don't like that.
Let me reframe it this way, because you're not wrong, and you shouldn't. I once tanked a competitive tennis match on purpose to get a ranking lower, and I lost. The same. I got the yips for. Well, let me finish. I got the yips for 6 years on my serve.
Wow.
For 6 years, I had to play at a high level serving underhand. So I believe in the basketball and the tennis and the sports gods. So let me say this. I wish that the Sixers had leaned into Doc's natural ability to lose games that he shouldn't and had naturally found a way to lose last night's game. Because you can't really be mad, even if it's a 5th in a row, at losing to the Celtics when Giannis goes out and there's a sort of emotional deflation that goes on. But you're right. A little momentum makes sense. A little momentum's good. Maybe we can meet in the middle. They beat Boston. What a great win. Yay. But now if they can lose some of these games and fall to the 3 seed, maybe they can sort of say to themselves, well, Giannis was out and he'll be back and have an easier road.
Well, your plan might come to fruition here, not on purpose, but just through this is how the schedule's coming out here, because they do still have the toughest remaining schedule. They close with the Magic, OKC, and then the Magic again. And the last 2 of those are on the road, and they haven't been a great road team. They're only 1 game up on the Knicks. It's really technically 2 with the tiebreaker. And then the Knicks close at Boston and then versus the Nets and the Bulls. And as you mentioned, that grouping behind them there it's all jumbled up. I mean, we have no idea. This thing's going down to the wire for seeding. It's super fun. I would expect for all the teams involved, it's super stressful. But for us, it's super fun. So the Knicks are 1 game back, and then you've got the Magic, the Cavs, and the Pacers all grouped up in that 4, 5, 6. So it could happen that way. It could go down that way. I want to talk to you about the team that they beat last night, the Boston Celtics, who by all accounts are having an unbelievable year. They lost last night. They didn't have Al Horford. They didn't have Kristaps Porzingis out there. They're kind of just like coasting into the playoffs here a little bit, but they're still 14 games up on Milwaukee, which is outrageous in an 82-game season. That is so hard to do. They've got the best record, the best point differential, the best offense, the second best defense, the best 1 through 6. This team is outrageously good. And yet there are still some questions about this team because they haven't won it all since 2008. And you believe that they have to win it this season.
They have to come out of the East. Like if you come out, yes, you have to win the East. If you come out of the East and you play the
Nuggets, enough?
I think it is for me. I think so. Okay. Let me add to your list. And it's a great, I mean, this is on paper in a regular season, they're historically awesome. I mean, they're a juggernaut. And I'm sort of on this kick, and some of the league office guys have been pushing this. So there's where that comes from. But I think it's true. I think outside of maybe a couple teams, Boston being the main one, I just think the parity is astounding. And I think the lack of separation between, the 2 or 3 seed in either conference and the 9 or 10 seed in some cases
Mhm.
is really thin. And we've talked about right before the Kings got injured, they were on pace to win a similar number of games and be much lower in the Western Conference. I just think that this level of separation and domination you're talking about from Boston would be significant at any time. But in a year, and I think a beginning of an era where there's not going to be that level of separation, it's amazing. And it was not that long ago that Brad Stevens had to take Joe Mazzulla on like long walks on the beach, or what's the equivalent in Boston? What is it, the Quay? What did they do there?
You can walk along the Charles.
Yeah, long walks on the beach of the Charles, I guess, whatever. If there's a beach there, and just remember they had to talk.
Kind of like a bank, like a. I used to sit out there on like there's like a grassy bank that you can sit on. There's like
I've
a little
never done that.
trail and stuff. Yeah.
So I picture them on the bank talking hoops, where Mazzulla obviously got them to a conference finals last year and obviously
Mhm.
got to a game 7 against the Heat. But the context is underperforming and sort of playing lackadaisically throughout the course of the playoffs, which I think what the exclamation point was, you get down 3-0 to Miami and the sky is falling. There was talk about firing him. There was talk about, can he do the job? There were clearly, all of us should just say, I think those things rear themselves up again in that locker room and NBA media, and maybe in ways that are significant in positions of actual authority in Boston if they flame out in the playoffs. And I think, to your point, it's a fair question. Is not winning it all enough? If that's a question, then losing in the second round or losing in the conference finals again, I think it would have been dire regardless of what the roster looked like. Add Drew Holiday, perfect fit. Add Kristaps Porzingis, perfect fit. You and I, all of us, the voters don't vote for Executive of the Year. It's the one major NBA award that's decided by executives. Brad Stevens is going to be Executive of the Year, I think, through his peers. So it's not his fault. Yeah, if Boston doesn't make it out of the East, especially given the injuries and how I wouldn't point to a single team outside of Boston that I would feel really good about. A single team, I'm like, that's the team. You got
I
to
almost always will take the field versus one team. In this instance, I'll take the Celtics versus the field because they've been that good. And the Eastern, I mean, but
I get
the reason why I asked about is it enough if they just get out is because, all right, like you've had a historic season. You've been the best team in the NBA, absent running into the Nuggets in a regular season game and not really playing that well against the Nuggets. But you've been the best team in the NBA all season long, and getting out of a bad Eastern Conference doesn't give me like a lot of, like let's line up the duck boats for the parade, right? Like you gotta win it all. And if it's the Nuggets that you run into, you got to beat the Nuggets. Like you have home court advantage locked up throughout the playoffs. If the series goes deep and you get to the finals and there's a game 7, it's gonna be in Boston. And we've seen them no-show in some game 7s previously. This has to be the year. As you said, they stacked the deck with Drew Holiday, who's a fantastic fit for them, and Kristaps Porzingis, who, at previous stops, my mileage varied a little bit on Kristaps. He's been awesome for them when available. And to have the luxury of Drew Holiday on most nights, Drew Holiday is your 5th or 6th offensive option. That's outrageous. So this is the year. You have to do it if you're the Celtics. It has to be this year.
You know what? You're winning me over to this argument. By the way, Drew Holiday, when he won an NBA championship in Milwaukee, was often the second most important player, including offensively on that team. You can make the Middleton argument, but it was dependent on the night. And
he had an outrageous playoffs. He was so good.
He's a stone cold winner, right? And the guy obviously plays on both sides of the ball. And you're right. He's their 4th or 5th guy. I love the Nuggets, but to your point about the field, it's the field in the West. Denver's not going to make an NBA Finals if they make it losing 1 or 2 games like the Warriors used to. Boston can and should. So whoever they see in the finals is going to have gone through, I think, a totally different war to get there, a different level of wear and tear. Let me ask you this counter question. So let's say that the Celtics completely flame out. They don't even make the finals.
Love this.
Badly in the conference.
This is a great scenario.
All right. And I know you love it. And Jayson Tatum again, because there's now data and Tom Haberstroh did a deep dive on this. I think he's great. It's not me just saying, he's no good late. He is historically.
He isn't. I'm glad you brought this up.
For over a 3-year timeline, and this year's timeline is significant too, right? The data is, there are times where like guys will be bad in crunch time over a 3-year timeline or a 4-year, but not really over the last 18 months. But the right, if you sort of lies statistics, this thing, not in this case. If Tatum is bad in key moments and Boston loses, it's not like you're going to get rid of Tatum, but what is the actual, it's easy to fire Mazzulla. What do you do if Tatum's the problem? Because I don't know the answer to that question.
Nothing. You're holding on. I mean, Tatum's going to get extended and get a max deal. And I mean, he's your guy. There's nothing you can do. He's one of the best players in the NBA. He's one of the best players in the NBA. And I would have him 5th on my MVP ballot if I had one. We still need to do yours, but I know that there's like a groundswell of support for Jalen Brunson to get into, the first team all NBA. I would have Jayson Tatum for me. But no, this is your guy. You're kind of stuck. But I'm glad you brought up the closing, because I think it's a little bit of a chicken and egg scenario, because late in games, you're right. Last time I checked, Jayson Tatum was among qualified players, had one of the worst clutch field goal shooting percentages in the NBA. But when you watch their offense, when like they haven't played a lot of games this season
this year,
where it's gotten tight, but when it happens, you notice the same thing. Their offense, which is the best offense in the NBA, stops operating. They have the other 4 guys, whoever's on the floor with him, go and stand in the corners, and it becomes Jayson Tatum iso ball. And I don't understand why they stop running the best offense in the NBA just to put it in his hands and let him do hero ball. Is it that Jayson Tatum has just decided to take this upon himself and everybody is like willing to acquiesce because, hey, whatever, we're going to beat everybody in the regular season anyway, so we might as well let him try this? Or is this like some sort of Joe Mazzulla by design? It boggles my mind every time it happens.
Now, look, you are right in what you're saying. It's totally true. And maybe to that degree, it's solvable. But there's also, not this year, but there are plenty of moments in that Warrior series where later, 2 years ago in the finals against the Warriors, that obviously the Celtics lost, where, remember this, Tatum said, "Oh, I was hurt," sort of in the offseason, like you were hurt. And last year, multiple times, including against the Heat, where this happened, but he had plenty of open looks that he also missed. I mean, I think it's both. The offense isn't run very efficiently in these situations, but he has had some. He's not been able to hit shots he should be hitting. And
I keep thinking about the Cleveland game that they lost. I guess it was like a month ago, maybe a little over a month ago, where they were falling apart in the fourth quarter, and they decided ISO. He took on Garland, and then Jared Allen helped on a step back, long 2-point buzzer beater that missed. And I'm like, what was that? That was incredibly bad offense. If you're Joe Mazzulla, you got to be like, whatever that was, put that back in your back pocket. And like, we're just going to run our offense because, oh, hey, this is kind of wild. Our offense is good when we just go with our offense.
Let me add this note too, because I'm not trying to be a Tatum hater. I think he's incredible. There was a legitimate conversation last year on Jokic and whether he's going to win a championship and then he won one, and the whole narrative shifted. And this happens in this sport. Hell, this happened to LeBron. I covered that team. It happened to LeBron, right? LeBron's great, but he's never going to win a championship. And then LeBron won 4 and is the second best player of all time. So maybe they'll just roll and he'll be great and they'll run the offense and he'll hit some shots. But I do think there's a lot at stake and there's consequences to some degree. If you're right, I think you're right. If they don't win the whole thing.
Joker last year was incredibly dominant in the playoffs. Like, that run was an historic playoff run where he was like, oh, I haven't won a championship. Not only am I going to win a championship, but Joel Embiid won the MVP. No. You're going to watch me during this and go, man, we really screwed that up. I'm the MVP. I have a hard time believing that's going to be Jayson Tatum, but I don't think it needs to be. The Celtics are a better team than some of those. Like, the Nuggets needed Joker to do all of that last year. 1 through 6, though, on paper, the Celtics are a better team. So we'll see if it works out that way. We're going to take a quick break. And then on the other side, big win for the Warriors last night. And we're going to also get into the rest of the Western Conference, which is a crazy jumble, and why I think the Suns should just disband. I've had enough of the Suns.
Uh-oh.
We're going to talk about that next.
I am a prisoner of this hotel.
Why do they let you live?
You must never leave. They can take away everything. They can't take away who you are.
Beyond the Arc, I'm John Gonzalez. He's Bill Ryder. If you're listening to us on a podcast, that's awesome. You should also check us out on YouTube. Our page is at Beyond the Arc CBS. You can subscribe to it, hit the like button, leave us a comment, check all that stuff out. We have all kinds of videos for you up on the YouTube page. So last night, Bill, Warriors and Lakers, huge game for seeding implications. Warriors ended up winning that game. They beat the Lakers. No AD in fairness to the Lakers.
The headache.
But the Warriors defense looked awesome. They had 12 blocks. They shot the lights out from deep. They had 63%. Draymond had 5 threes in the first half. Now, all of a sudden, the Warriors control their destiny. They have the tiebreaker. So if they win out, they will move ahead of the Lakers for that 9 spot. Big game.
And there's a world where the Kings can lose 2 of their last 3, and the Warriors could get up to that 8 spot. I mean, there's
Still
a world
in play.
where, yeah, how much fun, by the way, top of the thing, bottom of the thing is the NBA.
All of
night,
the things.
especially the Western Conference. Huge game. And this reinforces. So Ash and I did a deep dive on this yesterday, so I won't belabor it too much. But I pulled out a bunch of the numbers, and Aaron looked up a bunch too, and I did too. It is astounding, not surprising, but it is astounding how good the Warriors are when Draymond Green plays. And obviously there are counter problems, and you worry about him going to do some shenanigans, but they're a top 5 defense over the stretch now, as of today. Since he came back to the starting lineup, the 5 threes in a row is just a little gravy on top. And you're right. It's not just Draymond. It's the way that he energizes the team. And I'm going to pull out one example of the dozen blocks they had. That GP2 block. Are we allowed to call him the mitten? He doesn't like the mitten, right? He doesn't.
I didn't know that the mitten was a thing. But
I don't think you like. I met him when he was a high school kid. He is the sweetest, the nicest guy in the world. That block he had at the end of that game was amazing, and it just the energy level and the swagger that's real and the confidence of that team when Draymond Green is on the floor is amazing. I know I keep beating this drum, but I think the numbers back it up. Even if their path forward doesn't, maybe won't. The Warriors going back to January 27th, 29th, whenever it was, this bookend when Draymond played the Lakers on his return to the starting lineup, and then last night, obviously, they played the Lakers again. Over that stretch, John, they're a championship level team over that stretch, and it's a pretty big sample size. They just dug themselves such a big hole. Maybe it won't matter. That's my takeaway. I know there's no AD. That game mattered. It was important to both teams. It had an energy, and the Warriors look like that Warriors team that nobody wants to play and you take really seriously in years past.
Yeah, their defense has been so good. Post All-Star break, they've got the 8th best defensive rating. And what you mentioned about Draymond, that's part of why, the antics and the Draymond-ness aside, right? If you can extract that, and you can't because it's baked in. But when he's just playing basketball, he's one of my favorite players to watch, and he's such an integral part of that team because, the 5 threes was an aberration. I mean, he's not really a scorer. He's not a shooter. Nice to get it from him when you can. But all of the other things that he does, I've always liked guys like that. Like, Joe Kim Noah back in the day, where Joe Kim Noah couldn't shoot in an empty gym by himself, but he did all the other things. His energy was through the roof. He was an awesome rebounder and passer. He played defense. His effort level was crazy. And that energy was contagious. Draymond is a considerably better version of that. Right. And having him out there unlocks so much stuff for them. And just to keep him in the game, focused on playing basketball, not worrying about what the refs are doing, not worrying. I know he was complaining the other day about, or last night, that if somebody hit him in the face, or if he hit somebody else in the face, he said that they'd throw him under the jail. Okay, fine, whatever. Just keep playing, because if you guys went out, guess what? You're going to, at the worst, have the 9 seed. And as you mentioned, Bill, they could potentially long shot, but they could potentially move up to the 8 seed. But right now they've got a better than 50 chance of moving past the Lakers. Here's who they close with. They're at Portland on Thursday, and then they're home against the Pelicans and the Jazz. I'm going to say Portland and the Jazz are W's. So it comes down to that Pelicans game,
which is a big game, obviously. Every game is big for the teams that are still playing for something. It's a really big game for the Pelicans. I think they're going to win out. And I think there's a world where the Kings struggle. And I think I should have this memorized, but I don't. I think the Kings also have the Pelicans. I can't keep track of all the teams that are playing everybody because every game matters. So I looked at this yesterday. If you take the winning percentage the Lakers have when Draymond plays versus the winning percentage, and it's under 500 when he doesn't, and you just took out his games where he is suspended and just he played, right? And they won at the same clip, they're the 6th seed right now. And they're fighting for the 5th seed. And all of a sudden, we're not thinking about the Warriors, as we have, and I think I understand why, as this sort of lower play-in team, and they don't really have a chance. We're thinking of them in the same spot in the standings as the Mavs. Both teams are on fire, and there's this conversation about, wow, are the Mavs and the Warriors contenders? And my point is, I think the Warriors have gotten to that same place Dallas has gotten to, where they have found, it's not a surprise with Golden State the way I think it is with Dallas, but they have found their defensive excellence. They are legitimate. I'm not sure about contenders, but they certainly have been over a pretty big sample size to end the season. And if they end up with the right matchups, because they're not going to have the benefit of home court advantage like the teams at the top, we know Dallas can make a run. You've sold me on that. I've done a 180. I did it with the NHL.
Yeah, there you go.
Got into the numbers. Like, I got into the numbers, and it was just, you go to the NBA stats page, and then you're just like, oh, they're really good, and they're the best defense in the NBA since Gafford got inserted in the starting lineup. The Warriors have a similar sort of resume, and so I do think if you look at the Warriors in that context, who they actually are, that Draymond sort of betrayed and held back and obscured because of his absence, his silliness, his shenanigans. If you look at them as the team they should have been if it hadn't been for Draymond missing time, and you look at how they're playing, there's no reason they can't win all three of those games. And if they get some help from the Kings and the teams that play the Kings, thank you, Aaron. The Kings close with the Pelicans, the Suns, and the Blazers as a win, but they can lose two of those. They could lose two of those 3 games. They're not going to lose.
I'd much rather be the Warriors right now than the Lakers. Lakers close at Memphis and then at New Orleans. 86% chance, according to various models, that they end up in the 9 or the 10. If they end up in the 9 or the 10, let's say they drop down to the 10, all of a sudden, backs against the wall time for sure. You have a long way to get out. And if you don't get out, now all of a sudden you've got massive questions. We have spent a lot of time on this program going, hey, the Lakers are looking at the offseason with their 3 first-round picks that they can move, and how do they upgrade and whatever. They don't get out of the play-in. Now all of a sudden, LeBron's got that player option. Is he looking elsewhere? What kind of team building are you doing? You're going to spend an entire offseason hearing about how the Los Angeles Lakers, who 5th in offensive rating post All-Star break, looking really good. LeBron's having a career year from shooting from 3. My former colleague at Sports Illustrated, Chris Herring, just wrote an awesome piece about how LeBron's enjoying his best shooting season from distance at age 39 by changing his mechanics. All that goes out the window. All that positive stuff goes out the window, and now it's panic time.
And by the way, how does adding Trae Young to that team make a drastic difference, or even Donovan Mitchell on some of the things they need to work on? Can we say the quiet part out loud? Can I just say that, I like Darvin Ham a lot as a guy. The lineups that he puts together, the decision-making that he has shown. If you go back, some of the games the Lakers have lost this year that they should have won, shouldn't be in this position because of just bizarre decision-making by him, how long it took him to figure out his rotation.
But once they inserted Rui into the starting lineup, they got better.
Yeah, real late in the game.
Yeah, and it was only because Jared Vanderbilt got hurt too.
I get it.
Yeah,
so
he was kind of forced into that. He was kind of forced into it.
It's interesting because I don't think the Warriors should make drastic changes come what may. I think it works, and that is sort of a new perspective for me. I think you bring Clay back, and he said he wants to be back, and hopefully it's not too expensive. And I think, Wiggins has been so weirdly inconsistent, but Kuminga's obviously sort of come on finally. I would roll back with the Warriors if I was Mike Dunleavy Jr. I just would. If I'm the Lakers and you go out or you advance, I think this is a flawed basketball team. I think they're flawed.
I mean, it is, and they've got some difficult decisions to make in the offseason. As we mentioned, D'Angelo Russell has an $18 million player option. He's definitely opting out of that.
Yeah, he's getting paid more than that. Yes.
He's 1000% opting out of that. He's a guy that they tried to trade, and because they didn't trade him, they actually have stayed in this thing because he's been excellent since those trade rumors were dangled in front of him. But they need to bring him back, and if they lose him, it's going to be awfully difficult to replace him. On the Warriors thing, real quick before we move on to Clippers and Suns, I'm less sold on, hey, run it back and bring Clay back too. No, yeah, because I know he wants to resign. He was talking about it on the Draymond Green podcast. There's been some rumors about the Magic being interested. The Warriors are staring right into the face of the second tax apron next year. They're going to have to get rid of Chris Paul. That's an easy way to shed some salary. He's a free agent. Fine, boom, you can move Chris Paul. Clay, diminishing returns here, right? I mean, how many years, how much money? I like Clay. He wants to stay as a Warrior for life. I don't know, man. I think I might let him go.
It depends on the money. And by the way, it does not make sense maybe for the Warriors to overpay Clay, but it does make sense for the Magic. That's actually a really good fit.
Yes. I mean, Magic needs shooting.
They need shooting, and look, they're really good. I mean, they're really good, but adding a guy like Klay Thompson, who's a leader and kind of a quiet leader and a good vibe and is obviously a winner and has won a bunch of championships, that's the problem the Warriors are going to have. And I think that it'll come down to and I don't know this, but does Klay Thompson want to be a Warrior badly enough and think they have enough of a window to win there that he'll take whatever discount feels right and they can make it work? Or does he want to go get overpaid somewhere by a place? And I think the Magic are an example that should overpay him, or it makes sense
And
in a couple years.
no state income tax in Florida. Just throwing that out there. That's exciting.
Nobody talks about that. If you make
Texas,
$100 million, that's $11 million in cash if you're in California.
Texas and Florida. That's one of the benefits. All right. We don't have to belabor these next two for long, but I do think we should bring this up. So last night, Warriors and Lakers are happening, and you and I are locked in. And like, and like all of a sudden, I just was like, you know what? Let me just check in on this Clippers game. And I was like, what is happening? I wasn't paying attention. You were paying attention. I alerted you. They jumped out to a third. Clippers jumped out to a 37-point lead. The Suns had 33 points at the half. Booker didn't get his first field goal until about a minute left in the first half. Beal didn't even make a field goal in the first half. Now the Suns did come back. They cut it to 7 midway through the fourth before losing by double digits. The Clippers. No Kawhi Leonard last night. They ended up clinching a playoff spot, and it looks like we're on a collision course for them and the Mavs for the third time, which is going to be great. Fine in the 4-5 seed. The Suns, we have gone back and forth on the Suns all season long about what they are, what they aren't. I tweeted this out last night. This is a deeply unserious basketball team.
They're Dr. Jekyll and Mr. What the hell are you doing? I don't. So when you texted me and I looked at the score, I think one of us said, "What the hell's happened?" And I went at that moment, the Suns were shooting 17% from the field, and the Clippers were shooting like 180% or whatever the I think it was 60. But then the Suns, obviously, who have been a terrible fourth quarter team, not just this year, but by historical standards, made this late charge. I don't know what they are, man. I still think there's a ceiling there.
I can't believe that you bet me that this team could beat the Wolves in a 7-game series. I am so excited. I really hope that happens.
What's going to happen when that happens and I win that bet? Are you going to be able to do the podcast?
0% chance that you win that bet. I'm so excited about this.
Are you going to be able to show up for work that next day?
I will show up for work. I'll be very excited about it. Look, the Suns. All right. I will say with all three of those guys on the floor, right? Their main three. They're 23-15, even after last night's loss. But that loss last night is the perfect example of why the Suns are going nowhere fast. Not just for this season, but they are locked into this team for next season as well. They need to re-sign Grayson Allen. They need to re-sign Royce O'Neal. And after that, they're looking at minimum contract deals. They got no first-round picks to trade. They can't get off of Bradley Beal because he's got his no-trade contract. This is their team. Maybe it gets better next season. But for right now, for this season, when you're down 37 to the Clippers, and by the way, they got the encore tonight. They play the Clippers again. They got the home and home. So it was in Phoenix last night. They're playing in LA tonight. Maybe it'll be better for the Suns. But like, there are times when, a week ago they beat the Nuggets without Jamal Murray. Okay. But they also lose to the Spurs without Wemby. Then they go down 37 points. This team is not consistent enough to make a run.
By the way, I love that game too, because the Clippers are another team that have mortgaged their entire future on this idea of right now. And if Paul George leaves, good luck.
Can we stop right there?
Yeah.
Can we stop right there on, you just mentioned a guy who you have belittled, besmirched his good name.
You said, but dude, what are you talking about? How have I?
Paul George, you said on this program, I was like, hey, he's a free agent. There's a team out east that could, and you said you didn't want him to happen. You're not a real huge Paul George guy. He's been so efficient post All-Star break.
But you like to misframe the things I say. So let me set the record straight. And about Kyrie too. I've never doubted their excellence in the regular season. That's never the conversation that we've had. The context of those conversations and the reality of their stories are when these are guys that you bring in because you expect to win a championship, and that is the goal. And outside of Kyrie hitting that shot and playing with LeBron, he was great in that series. Great. They've been underwhelming and they have been problematic. There's a reason Damian Lillard got to wave goodbye to Paul George. There's a reason that Kyrie flamed out in Boston and then they went to the moon after he left, and why it didn't work out in Brooklyn. So I think he's a great player. I just have real hesitancy about him as a postseason player. And you put him in a place with such a fragile emotional reality as your Sixers and fans like yourself. You do what you want to do, but
what I'm saying for this year is it's his best season in probably 5 years. He's played more games than he has played in the last 5 years. Post All-Star break, when Kawhi no Kawhi again last night. He hasn't played in over a week since he played in that Charlotte game. And then James Harden couldn't hit 20 points to save his life. Who stepped up for the Clippers when they needed him most? Paul
He's great.
George, he has been absolutely excellent. I just want to
He's a
throw that
great
out there that he's been really good. Real quick
He's a
before we
great
take a
player.
break here, the Suns, they are now in 7th. They close at the Clippers, at the Kings, at the Wolves, all losable games. I just have no faith in them whatsoever.
Look, I think they can win every one of those games. I think they can lose every one of those games.
That is the Phoenix Suns experience.
I mean, the thing is, like, they've had good wins. And let me say this too, I don't want to belabor this, but you brought up losing to Wemby and the Spurs. That's actually been kind of the Gone in 60 Seconds of movies. That is a terrible movie, but it's a great movie. It's a great, terrible movie. The Spurs the last 3 weeks or whatever have been a really good, bad team. Like, Wemby's just gone to another.
Yeah.
So
no, but they didn't have Wemby in that game.
I know. That's what I was going to say. But, like, and they lost twice to him this year, didn't they? I think they lost twice to the Spurs.
Yes. And you know what? You're absolutely right. The Spurs of recent vintage with Wemby have been a tough out.
Yeah, but that's just a statement to the Spurs and the teams that are playing them over the last 3 games. They're actually not as bad right now as their record indicates. Look, the Suns can beat anybody and they can lose to anybody. I think that's the reality. More likely to lose.
In conclusion, fade the Spurs. All right, we're going to take a quick break and then we're going to do stock up, stock down on the other side. That's next.
Every spring, we marvel at its majesty. A tradition unlike any other. The Masters. This weekend on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
Welcome back. Wednesday edition of Beyond the Arc. John and Bill closing it out with a little stock up, stock down as we want to do on Wednesdays. Bill, you go first.
All right, let me ask you a question, John. Am I allowed to swear on a CBS branded podcast if it's a direct quote from LeBron James to make my point?
I have exactly zero power or say in these things. I'm sure Aaron can just bleep it.
Yeah, and I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna stock up the person who came in with the play-in tournament because LeBron James spoke for many of us. Remember when I think he first was trending toward it when he said whoever came up with this shit should be fired. Whoever came up with the play-in idea, and I didn't like it when it happened either, should get a promotion and a raise and an extra 3 weeks of vacation and whatever else, because it has been, and I know that the games are great all up and down, it has transformed the end of the season. So there was a time when beat writers, I remember when I started covering the NBA full time, and like some some guys like took me under their wing, were like, here's what you do, blah, this, and you take the first week of April off because the games don't matter and you have to get ready. Everybody would go on cruises. I remember my first year, they all went on cruises. They're like, I showed up one day for work and none of the beat writers were there because the games didn't matter. Now we talk every day. Every game, some random Pelicans game is amazing. It's an amazing game. So whoever came up with that, well done. We were wrong. LeBron was wrong. I was wrong. Great job. The game is better for it.
I love it. I loved it since they came up with the idea. I've loved it the entire time. And by the way, LeBron should be thanking his lucky stars. Just something I don't even say something like that, but I'll say it in this instance. He should be very thankful that it exists because without it, they would be out of the playoffs. I mean, maybe there's a chance that they sneak past the Kings, to close out the regular season, but we'd be without LeBron and without Steph Curry for the playoffs, which would suck. That would be a bummer. And now at least, the NBA right now still sweating it. They could end up without one or both of these teams, but there's still a scenario where they do get into it. So yes, I love it. I think it's fantastic. My stock up is tonight's game. We haven't talked about it yet. I'm super excited for it. It could very well determine first place in the Western Conference. It is Wolves, who you have so much contempt for, and the Nuggets, who are the defending champions. And one of these teams, look, I think this matters quite clearly much more to the Wolves than the Nuggets. I don't think that the Nuggets end up in the 2. They're just going to go about their business. It would really be a boon for the Wolves because 1, it'd be a little bit of validation on how their season has gone so far. But 2, if for some reason they do end up 1-2 in the Western Conference Finals facing the Denver Nuggets, you're going to want that home court advantage. The Wolves have been awesome at home this year. Let me see real quick. Wolves at home this year, 29-10. Sounds pretty good, right? The Denver Nuggets are 32-8 at home, Bill. They're basically unbeatable at home.
That is a hard place to go play. That
hard place to go play.
Is real.
Yes.
All of it's real. Yeah.
So
right.
Big game tonight. Big game for the Wolves. I can't wait for this one.
Can I add to your point? Because it's a good one. I want to add to it.
Please.
Even more important than home court advantage in the Western Conference is not having home court advantage for the Denver Nuggets. Forget every other team in the West. That is a very real. That's a very, very real thing. So it's one game in the NBA in an 82 game regular season. This is not whatever. This is not the NFL, or it's not a Grand Slam tennis match. Anything can happen, but it does feel like advantage Denver, doesn't it? The experience, haven't been there. I know the Timberwolves have been great without Cat, but still, just doesn't it feel like Denver's probably going to win this game? Like if you're betting on the game,
Yeah, I'm interested to see. I mean, you mentioned how the Wolves have played without Cat. They're 12-5 without Cat.
Yeah.
And we just found out that Cat isn't going to play in tonight's game, but they do expect him to play one of their final 2 games in the regular season to get him back before the playoffs. So that's a positive. And Anthony Edwards went absolutely out of his mind last night, put up a career high 51. Both teams on a back-to-back. Here's the one caveat when I go, yeah, I'm with you. I think it feels like a Nuggets win. Is Jamal Murray playing tonight too? Because he played last night. Yeah, I wonder if they're going to play him on the back-to-back.
So here's what I'll say. As you know, and I'm not sure everybody does, Jamal Murray is critically important to what they do. Like Jokic is amazing, but they're not winning anything without Jamal Murray. Jokic is the better player, I get it, but they're not winning anything without Jamal Murray. He has to be there. How much do the Nuggets value being the 1 seed? Right? If it's really important to him, he is playing.
I don't think it's as important to them, not nearly as much as the Wolves would love to get this. That would be such a big boom. I'm so excited for this game. I cannot wait. It'd be awesome.
Beat them in 5. All right. I love that you brought up the record that the Timberwolves have and their excellence without Cat, because it plays into my stock down. You ready? Stock down, my MVP ballot. I get I don't have anxiety about anything. I'm so lucky I have so many friends and loved ones who do. I have anxiety about this vote every year. And okay, it's probably Jokic. You
got 4 guys locked in.
Here's the thing. I think Anthony Edwards deserves real consideration for a legitimate spot on the ballot, especially if they win the West. So this is what I was thinking about today. I haven't heard it anywhere. I'm sure it's out there. I don't know what the odds are, but I was just thinking on the radio show, I was thinking if they win this game tonight, and they win the West, and they are whatever their record's going to be without Cat because of Ant Edwards, how am I putting Anthony Edwards above? I mean, I'm supposed to put Luka Doncic, but then Doncic is on a roll. So then I was thinking, they're on a roll. But what about Tatum, dude? And then there's SGA just because he got hurt. I don't know.
So I have had I spent a lot of time looking at this. I don't have a vote. You do have a vote. I'm happy to help you through it. I think there's pretty much the top 4 are pretty much locked in. I think it's in order. It's Joker, SGA, Luka, and Giannis. And then that 5 spot, the big debate in NBA circles is the 5 spot. And a lot of people have Tatum. There's been a groundswell for Jalen Brunson. You're bringing up Anthony Edwards, and I think I'm glad that you're there. I mean, you're one of the few people in the NBA who has really floated this. And I think it's a very good point because, as you know, I've trumpeted the Wolves all season long. Their defense has been outstanding. Edwards plays both ways. When Cat went down, I thought that they were screwed. They're 12-5 with Cat. If they win tonight, without Cat, they'll be 13-5. And that is a lot of it is on Anthony Edwards. So if you're telling me that you're thinking about putting Ant in the 5 over Jayson Tatum, there's a case to be made. I'd still go Tatum though.
By the way, to your point, part of my skepticism with the Timberwolves is that they're not top 10 in offensive and defensive rating. They are obviously in top 10, well beyond that, well better than that in defensive rating. They're mediocre offensively. I haven't looked today, but it's usually 17 or 18.
Yeah, they're 1 in defense. Let me check to see where they are for the season.
I bet it's 16 or 17. I think it's inched up a little bit. Anthony Edwards is the offense. And so here's the other thing, and this is just how I operate. I think there's way too much conformity and groupthink in the NBA. I know that too many NBA writers and media people and certainly voters are so worried that they're going to look stupid. They don't think for themselves. And I think that's why Russell Westbrook was the MVP several years ago when he shouldn't have been. And then all these guys all these guys and gals regret their vote. So I'm trying not to consume too much what's everybody else doing because I don't give a shit. I don't care. I want to get it right. I want to get it right. I don't want to be able to sit at the cool table with the kids at the NBA finals. And I want to get, and I think 1's easy. I actually think 2 to 5, there are 6 or 7 names that can go in almost any order. And it's really, really, really hard because it's captives of the moment at the end of the year. It's the entirety of the season thing.
The Wolves are 16th in offense and 1 in defense. I mean, that's what they've been all season long. They've been the best defense in the NBA all season long, and they've been an average offensive team. But I like them when they bring back Cat, because now all of a sudden Naz Reid, who's been awesome in the Cat role as a starter, you get him off the bench, and now, like, man, you're getting some significant minutes from your 6-man. I'm high on the Wolves.
Is that the 6-man of the year? Because he wasn't a lot of his stats come from start. It's all
6-man of the year is an interesting conversation, because I thought Malik Monk was going to lock it up, and then he got hurt, and now you got Norm Powell in there. Now you've got Naz Reid in there. It's a conversation to be had. Last one for us on Stock Up, Stock Down. I was going to mention, Torrey Craig and Andre Drummond. If you guys haven't seen that play, go and check it out. It's very funny, and it would normally be a stock down. I'm going to give a quick stock up, though. I'm going to go off menu.
Okay.
Earlier in the week with Ashley, I mentioned to you guys that a bird flew into my house on a suicide mission. RIP to the bird is what we said. Well, I took the bird outside and I put it on it. Like, we have a bunch of hedges in the back, and I laid it down on the hedges. And then I came inside to do the show. I have a bird update for you guys. Stock up on the bird resurrecting itself and living. I came back outside, and the bird, it must have just conked itself out and then got up and flew off.
Did you see a fly, or maybe something ate it? Let's say
I didn't, but I was inside to do the show for 45, 50 minutes. The chances of something eating it that quickly and in its entirety, I think it's alive.
I'm going to get random here, and I'm going to use a prop here, even though, most people are listening. One of my favorite books of all time, I'm rereading The Thousand Summers of Jacob. It's Zoot. I always call it Zoet, by David Mitchell. The opening scene has a baby that dies, but then somehow miraculously lives, which is a huge part. So you're it's a miracle that sets the whole thing in motion.
I was really bummed out about the poor bird. I felt awful about it. And now I feel great. I'm glad the bird's out there living its life. So stock up to the bird. Shouts to them.
Bird.
Yeah. Way to go, bird. And stock up to your Barcelona team, PSG. Hopefully they win in the Champions League later on today. So we wish you luck with that. For us, for right now, that's it. So for our NBA insider, Bill Ryder, I'm John Gonzalez. We're going to be back at it tomorrow with Ashley Nicole Moss. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow.